We're doing a brush haul.
Illustrations by me.
Now maybe there are some other people who have done some brush hauls before, but I've never heard of one. So as far as I know, this could be the first ever brush haul. Anyway, I don't think it is. Golden Maple sent me a ton of brushes and I want to go through some of them with you. The one to beat is the Ed Grimley of brushes. I love this brush. It's that pointed, you can see, look at this thing right here. Look at that thing right there. That is an Ed Grimley brush if you've ever seen one. I love this brush. I use it all the time. I have a set of them and I use them all the time. They're one of my favorite brushes I've ever used. And you of all know that because I have told you before. So they sent me some other things. They said, what do you think about these? Have you ever used a long handle watercolor brush? Because I have before. And the thing that I actually like about the long handle watercolor brushes is, I have not seen many long handle watercolor brushes before, and these are like medium. I don't think these are long, but they're medium. So there's some Sable Rounds here. I'm going to introduce you to all the brushes, then I'm going to show you some marks with them. I'm going to use them all. But this set here is 6 they're artist brushes. They're Sable watercolor, and there are Sable. That's what they said. They said these are Sable. And that's what when you hear people talk about watercolor brushes, that's what you hear. People talk about Sable watercolor brushes because of the way that they hold water and the way that they spring back. We're going to test these and see if they hold up to them. There's 6 of them here. So I'm going to go with the larger ones just to start with and see if we can't make it work. So there's size 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. I don't know why brush companies make them all even sizes. There's no in-betweens. What if I wanted a 7? How about an 11? How about no, they always do the 2, 4, 6, 8, 12, 10, 12. That's what if you know how to count, that's the way it goes. Then we have some really long handle brushes. Now, these are flat brushes. I love flat brushes. If you ever hear me talk about my favorite brushes that I use besides the Grimley, that one it's not really called that. That's what I call it. Anyway, don't worry about that. I always say I like the flat or the angled or something like that. I like that flat edge. I just enjoy painting with it. So they sent me some, and these are long handle. Now let me tell you something about long handle brushes. Let me just explain this. People say, oh, I don't know if I like long handle brush. So there's a couple of different things you can do with a long handle brush. Number one, when you paint at a distance, you can do the whole art thing. You know, the snooty art thing where you hold the damn thing down here and you do this but let me tell you what it's actually good for. If you want to paint loose, if you're someone who paints very tight all the time and you want to loosen up, get a long-handled watercolor brush because it forces you, if you hold it from the back end, it forces you to paint a lot more loose. Now, that's not bad. What I like to do is paint loose and then put in the line work with my pen. So I don't mind using the long handle brushes. And quite honestly, if you really didn't like the long handle and you couldn't find a shorter handle brush from them, you could just cut it. You little snips and you snip it. It's not a big deal. But some people like them, some people don't. It doesn't matter. You can use them whether you like it or not. Now, if you hold it all the way up here, you're going to have this big thing poking you in the eye. You don't want to do that. So you want to hold it back a little bit. Even if you're painting down like this, you're going to hold it back a little bit and just paint like that. It really, all it helps you do is loosen up your painting. I've always wanted to try to paint with my shoulder. You know, they tell you to paint with your shoulder when you use a long handled brush. They say, use your shoulder. So I tried. It's not working like that. It doesn't work for me. Don't worry about that. You can use it by holding it in your hand much better than you can using the shoulder. Paint with your hand. We will go through those. Then, something I've never seen. Well, let me show you the other one because I took the plastic off. And anyway, have you ever painted with calligraphy brushes? I am going to butcher this, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I do not do calligraphy, and they come to this ridiculously long point. Look at that. And they do, have you ever seen them do it? I'm going to do something. It's going to be terrible. I'm not trying to insult anybody, but you just paint by like going straight down and then moving, and the shapes that it makes and the marks that it makes are very poetic in the actual shape of the thing that you're painting. Looks poetic. That's how it is. So I'm going to try that. I have 3 here, and then as a completely different thing, I have one that I've already ruffled the feathers. I've already taken the plastic thing off, and I just broke apart the thing just to see how stiff those brushes. Now, these are normal. You're supposed to do this a little bit in the beginning. They shed a little bit. These are wool. I don't understand how they're wool brushes, but that's what they are. They say they're wool brushes, and they actually collect them at a time when they're shedding. So this is like, no harm comes to the animal here. They just, when the animal's shedding, they collect the wool and then they put it in a brush, and now you have a wool brush. So I think that's very interesting. I don't know. I've never seen that. I'm going to have to go look that up on someone else's video and see how they make wool brushes, because I've never seen that before. The thing that I know, see, they did this right with the little loop at the end right there, because they know that you're supposed to hang it like this and let it dry like this. Where a lot of people sometimes let it dry flat, sometimes they just lay it down on the cup and it's just tilted this way, and all the water's running back up into here, destroying the brush. You don't do that. You don't leave it in the water. You don't do that either. But you need to hang it from the back. So they give you the little loop. If you have little hooks, you just hook it right on there. That's fine. And the last thing that they sent was this here. These are detail brushes, and if you've ever used detail brushes, you know that sometimes they're a pain. You get a small, thin brush that you can barely hold. It's very tiny. It's hard to use. So their detail brushes are a little different. And I've seen detail brushes like this before. I don't mean that no one else makes them. But anyway, they do have this little triangle grip on here. So no matter what angle you're trying to use, and there's flats and points and rounds and all that. So no matter what angle you're trying to hold that brush at, you have a flat grip to kind of grip it with your fingers. I think that's a great idea. I've never used one with the grip. I've always had those tiny ones that you can barely hold on to. Now I used them to, I had these little medieval things that were like this big, and you paint the guy, and you do the, if you do any kind of that, or if you paint models or anything like that. But really, any watercolorist can use these, especially if you're, I know someone's going to say, real watercolorists don't use white. And I'm not talking to you. If you use white if you put white gouache on something, or you get the bulletproof, like the bleed proof, bulletproof, whatever it's called, white ink that everybody uses. I don't use that, but you could use that one. I use other ones. I use gouache all the time. And this, just to get little distinctive highlights. And the reason that the gouache is good, or you could use this for, you can try to use it with watercolor, but nothing's really going to absorb in that. Look how tiny. You see how tiny that is? Yeah, you're probably not going to absorb much watercolor in there. But if you're using gouache, you can get it a little bit more concentrated, a little bit more pasty, get it to that consistency, and this will hold it just fine and apply it just fine. I'll show you. I'm going to do that in the video. Now, before I said medium for these rounds, I want to show you the difference. So this is the long handle. Do you see it comes down to here? Yeah, okay. This is the medium, or what I'm calling a medium handle. You see, there's about that much difference. This is a regular watercolor brush. It's not much difference than the medium. It's just a cup, I mean, maybe a centimeter. It's not much at all. So these what I'm saying, medium length brushes are almost regular size brushes, just a tiny bit longer. They just give you a little bit more. And again, if you want to loosen up a little bit, you hold it back a little bit. It helps you loosen up. It helps you control it less. And that's good for your painting. So, and then like I said, I go back in and then I use ink to put in my details. So this helps me paint loose. I've paint anyway. I've held it down here and painted. I've held it back here and painted. Whatever you like to do, it doesn't really matter. It's not a big stretch here. Just to give you a better point of reference, this is the 8, what I'm calling a medium size handle. This is a number 8 regular. Do you see how there's not much difference here at all? Do you see the difference there? It's not much difference. It's just a little bit, it's like a half a digit on your thumb. It's not a big deal. So if you're used to painting with the short handle brushes, a medium really isn't much of a stretch. It doesn't really matter. The only benefit is if you want the extra reach and you just want that little bit extra to paint a little looser, these are great for that. But really, handle sizes, they're different with companies. So some companies will have their 8 be longer, some of them will have be short. You can never tell, it's just what you're comfortable using. Okay, we're gonna switch angles now. I'm gonna start showing you the kind of marks that they make and how I would use them. So, okay, before we get into this real quick, I just have to tell you about something. You remember I did the wrap thing, the heated jade things, and they were on your wrist and they warm up and they help you with arthritis and things. Well, I guess someone saw that. I don't know, but I'm guessing Bob and Brad got in touch with me. Do you know who Bob and Brad are? You should know who Bob and Brad are. They're a lot more famous than I am. They have over 5 million subscribers here on YouTube. I will link their channel down below. They're all about getting people out of pain, physical therapy, that kind of stuff, and how to handle those kinds of things, fitness, wellness, and that kind of stuff. And they said, hey, look, we saw that, you know, Halo, you're a painter. You're talking about this stuff here. We have something for you. So this one is, I was going to say a step up, and I think it really is. So this is going to be an electric hand massager that you stick. It's wireless, so you don't have to worry about a cord anywhere. And there's a little pouch that comes with it, of course. But anyway, this thing here is really cool. It comes with a bunch of other stuff too. There's stuff in here. You could gloves and things like that, little massage roller. But you stick your hand in here. Let me see if I can you see in there? You could see in there. You could see me through there. Can you see me through there? I can see you. So anyway, you stick this thing in and it has a couple different settings here. You turn the power on here. It starts, so what it does is it has these air pockets in it and it starts filling the air pockets to your fingers, then it goes to your hand, then it goes down to your wrist, and it kind of, there's several different modes. There's heat if you want heat. There's intensities you can set if you want intensities. But I will tell you, just putting this on, right now it's working. You can't see it, can you? Yeah, you can see where it's filled the air by my fingers. Okay, so you see how it's releasing the fingers and then it's inflating the fingers and then releasing them. So it's kind of like massaging in that way. It also vibrates a little bit, but it's the pressure from those pads kind of inflating those air cushions here, here, and here in different orders and how it goes. And it's it's actually very nice. You just sit there for a minute. You can just put it on your desk. You can take a nap and just relax with it because it's timed. It has timing on it, so it'll go off eventually. And I've already used it several times, and I can tell you that it has heat. So did I say that? It has heat. So if you like the heat on you, put the heat on you, and then it does that compression thing and kind of keeps the circulation moving at the same time with the heat. That's a benefit because if you just have heat, it does improve circulation. But if you have something massaging that area while you have the heat, it's very extra beneficial. And since there's no cord, you can take this with you on a trip. Take it in the car, whatever. Don't drive. Not if you're driving. You know what I mean. You understand things like that. You're an adult. But you can put this on. It's wonderful. And it works. It feels nice. It feels very relaxing while you have your hand in there and set the intensity, please. If you want it less intense, set it less intense. Don't say, oh, I'm going to try and do the hardest one. Do the lightest one first. That's what people, I don't understand people. They always do, let me do the hardest one, then if I need to, I'll back it down. No, do the lightest one and work your way up. That's the way you're supposed to do everything anyway. So I'll put a link down below for this massager. Let's get into the video. Okay, so I've went through and I've picked a brush from each of the sets that I'm going to use. Let me show you. I like bigger brushes. Not everyone does, but usually I tend to go towards the bigger brushes. I don't know why. I just enjoy using them. I can get just a fine line. They pick up a lot of paint. I think it's fine. Anyway, so this one here was the only one in this set. It was the only one in the box. So I'm using this Calligraphy, and you can see, yeah, there's a couple of hairs falling out. As I washed it out, because it had this brush stiffener in it, as I washed it out, I ran my thumb through it a few times and pulled out some extra loose bristles. These do that. They shed. That's what they were made from, shedding fur, and they're going to be shedding fur themselves. But anyway, These here, I'm going to use this one and try and use it as best as I can. Probably not the way it needs to be used. Same thing with this one. I picked the largest one in the set. I probably should have picked the smallest one in the set since I picked the other large one. These two are virtually the same. I think they're different, made out of different fur or whatever. I don't know. I think they're made out of different hair. I know when I say fur, sometimes that freaks people out. It's hair. I know. Anyway, now the flat brush, here's something interesting about the flat. I picked the number 10 Sable Flat. You can see how it's rounded at the sides a little bit and then comes to that flat top thing. That's to hold extra water. That's what that's for. So this part holds more water and then the tip is a little bit smaller. But when you press on it, you can fray it out a little bit and almost get it. If I flatten it out enough, you can see it's not quite like a filbert that's rounded, but it does get the little rounded edges on the side. That's okay. That's wonderful. That's what it's supposed to do anyway. The regular Sable Round, I picked the number 8 because that's something I know that I always use. I always go for that 8. A 6 to an 8 is usually where I fall. Sometimes bigger, but usually the 8 is a good middle ground for me, and that's where I like to stay. So that's fine. And then for the detail brush, I picked the number 0. It's the 0. It's a flat. You see that? It's a little bit of a flat, but and this is what I would use. This is the one that I would pick out of the set every time if I was putting a little bit of gouache into a watercolor or something. I wouldn't get something so small you can't see it, and I wouldn't get something big where it's going to flex too much. Something like this is perfect, and I do love that grip. I'm going to enjoy using that. I've never used one with the little triangle grip before, so that's wonderful. So I'm going to get started with that, and we'll get into... First I'll do the line marks on the page, on the watercolor paper. Then I'm going to do a painting with these brushes, all of them in one painting. Now I was going to use the Phoenix set because I do enjoy these. These have stayed tacky. They're not completely, they're not wet where they're coming off on my hands, but they're tacky a little bit. It's very interesting. But you see, even if I go to this number 8 round, it's going to be difficult to use on this pan here. It's just too small. Those half pans are not the best. If I was using the water brush or something, I might do that. I know I did it. But all in all, I think that right now I'm just going to do something with some full pans, because I think full pans is where these need to live. So I'm going to use these full pans, and you can see that if I was to use this, the whole brush actually fits in the pan. Yay! Isn't that wonderful? That's why I use full pans. I'm a big fan of the full pan. Okay, so we'll start with the most basic, which is the 8 round. It's a standard rounds. Everyone knows rounds. That's what they are. This is the Sable. Now let me show you something about the Sable. So something that's known about the Sable is after you get it full of water and you snap it off, it kind of comes to a point. So the point reforms, and that's very important on a round brush. You want that point to reform when you snap it off. Now, this is supposed to have some spring too. So after you see that little bit of spring in the brush there, that's what you want. You want it to have that little bit of spring and come back down. So if you take a squirrel brush and you do that, it'll stay bent like that. So if you push down on that, it'll stay bent like that. This brush doesn't. I'll show you from a side view so you can see it a little better. So you want it to bounce. See how it bounces back? That's what you want in a good Sable brush. That's why you get Sable, is because it does that. All right, let's make some marks with it. Standard watercolor marks from a nice watercolor brush. And I'm going to use one of my favorite colors, the Perylene Violet here. And that dumped a ton of water in that pan. So that's how you know it's going to hold a lot of water. It's also going to pick up a lot of paint. And this thing, yeah, I just lifted it up. It's not skipping. That's me skipping because I'm lifting my hand up. There's a lot of paint in here, and it usually holds itself for a long time because it has such a big belly on it. I can relate. So, and you see it's starting to lessen and lighten and that kind of thing there. Wonderful. So with watercolor brushes, let me show you something else that you want to see. So one of the things you want to see is when I put this down here and then I lift it up, it doesn't just dump color in one spot. Let me get a lighter color so you can see that a little better. Okay, so when you go across and you dip down and you come back up, you don't want to see right there a big line of concentrated color. So you want to see the kind of an even stroke on the color like that, where it's not dumping a bunch right at the end. That's what you want, even strokes of color. That's exactly what you're looking for. And of course, if you do that and then pop it up, you're going to have a spot that has heavier paint because that's what you've just done. But when you just paint with it, you want it to be very even. That's what you want to see, is that just that nice even stroke. And then when you lift up, there's not like a puddle somewhere. Sometimes you touch the page and it dumps all the color there, and then it lightens up, and then on the end, and all you see is water in the back. You don't want to see that either. So this is perfect. This is performing exactly like I would want my Sable brush to perform, just like you'd want any watercolor brush to perform. Now, generally, that's a tougher test with your flats. So let me show you with the flat. Okay, now flats, like I said, this is a tougher test with the flat. Flats almost always have a little bit of unevenness in it. So let's see what happens here. I say that's pretty even. I think that's pretty good. That's what I would expect. It's not, when you touch the paper, it's not just dumping color. And then as you go, it's kind of an even spread across, and you pick up and you don't have another dump here. This is exactly what you want from a Sable brush. This is what you want from any watercolor brush. You want even strokes all the way through. Now, of course, there's different concentrations of paint, and I happen to pick colors that, if they're a little bit lighter, you can see that they're lighter versus if they're a little darker. But all in all, this is exactly what you'd want to see in a paintbrush. And of course, with the flats, not only do you get that, but you can also get a thinner line just using the edge. You can do that as well, and you can get kind of a stepped approach. So if you wanted to make some texture, you can hit the side of the brush there and just kind of add a little bit of texture to whatever you're painting, and it will just kind of fill in the spot like that. There's a lot of different marks you can make with any brush. You have to play with it and see what you can do. You can also do just like I did here, where it gets a little bit thicker as you touch the belly down and then bring it back up. Now, if you do that, once you hit the belly of that brush, you are going to get a dump of water. That's just what happens. That's not anything bad. It's not out of the ordinary. That's what happens. Now, I was talking to you about using this for gouache, this little detail brush here, and that's exactly what I would use it for. So I'm going to use, this is M-gram gouache, so it re-wets a little bit easier. Sometimes the whites do re-wet a little bit harder, and it's harder to get a concentration of that white on there. But if you're using this little brush here, you can load it up almost with really concentrated paint with very little water, and then you can apply it. And when you do, you can get a thin line by going to the side, or you can get a thicker line by coming down like this. Now, gouache will dry lighter than what you put it down. You can see how concentrated that is by how the fact that that has a little bit of a dry brush effect on there. So I did not make this wet at all. If I wanted to add a little bit more water, I can, and then come back in here and just have a thicker line like that with a little bit less dry brush, and you can do that. There's not a problem with it. So that's exactly how I'd use this brush. It's working exactly as I would want it to work. When that dries, it's going to get a little lighter because it's gouache, like I said. But that's how you'd want to use that brush. And now, if you want to go in kind of on the side of something, so this is, with this grip, you have to figure out how you're going to hold it. So I would hold it like this. If I held it on this other side of the grip, now the brush is crooked. If I hold it this way, now it's to the line side. So just however you're going to hold this little triangle is going to determine what kind of line you're going to get. So what I'm going to do is find the line that holds it straight, find the grip, and then I would do that little fine line across. And you can get a very, very fine line, a very thin line. And so far, that's actually putting down so thick of paint that that is not getting much more see-through, much more transparent. It's actually very opaque because I was able to get a good load on the brush, and that's important. You see where it watered out a little bit more, it's starting to fade a little bit more. But for the most part, I got that nice thick line on that brush because it holds a more amount of paint rather than water, and that's what you want if you're trying to put a highlight with a gouache. you want more paint than you do water. Now, if you're painting miniatures or things like that, this is good for just getting in tight spots, but it would still hold some paint because, of course, acrylic paint is much thicker. So if you're painting with acrylic, it would hold the acrylic paint just fine. Okay, now I'm going to butcher this. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I'm not doing it on purpose. I'm going to try and do this, but I'm going to just, let me see if I can just do something here for a second. So I don't know how well this is going to work, but I'm going to do my best. So just keep that in mind. So I'm not dipping the whole belly of the whole thing. I do have a lot of water in here and then paint there. But these are kind of, you come straight down on these and you make like a single line or stroke with them or something like that. Like you would do something like this. And then, you know, a little thing here like that. And then something like that or something like, you know what I'm trying to do. I'm not good at it. I don't know what I'm doing. But anyway, and then of course they would do something that would be like this. And then, oh, I'm working on it. Hold on. Give me a second. I'm trying to do the best I can here. And then kind of like that. And kind of make like a scene of some kind. You know what I'm saying. I did it backwards. I think this part should have been the darker color. This part should have been the red. It doesn't matter. But basically, it's like single strokes with like dots and little small little things, little intricate things. And that's how these are traditionally used. Whenever I've seen any kind of painting, I can't do that kind of painting, or at least I've never tried to. So I'm not going to be the best at it. However, that's something that I'm going to try and use it in some way in the painting. I don't know if I'm going to use it that way or not. Here's what I do like about it. What I do like about it is, and based on both of these, that's wonderful. But then they both work relatively the same. So when you start going, even though there's so much water in the belly of that brush, and I've only dipped the tip of it for the paint, and it's just holding a lot of paint, almost like it got sucked up inside the belly just by dipping just the very edge into the paint. So there's a lot of paint in there, and then you can kind of get that big swash of color with a little bit of extra water if you want to. So that's what happened here. It started thick. I pushed the whole belly down and got some little lighter spot with the water. And then as I pulled it back up, it went back to more concentrated because I was just hitting the tip of the brush. So, and that's what this is still doing. I haven't re-dipped this. It's still holding paint in the tip of the brush, even though I dumped the belly of the water on this side. So it's a very interesting and very unique kind of brush. It's very fun to play with. I've never played with one before, but I am now. Now you see the size of these brushes, right? That's why these Kuretake pans are so massive. Look at, let me just slide this over here. So you look at that. I can get the brush in there. That's incredible. That's compared to a full pan. I can't get that brush in there. I can only put the edge of the brush, the tip of the brush in there. But this one, I could dip that whole brush in there. And that's why these pans are so big. And that's why it's so wonderful to use these. So I may use some of these colors in the painting when I use this brush. I'm not sure. We'll see. Okay, so let's see if I can do this just a little bit better here. Daniel Smith, Piemontite Genuine. Love the color. Not at all the way that you would do this, but I'm just trying something here. Just bear with me for like a half a second, okay? Okay, let's see here. So, am I even getting close? Is it even halfway to the point where I need to be? I have no idea, but let me do this. How's that? Am I doing okay here? I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm trying. Just bear with me just for a second. Let's see if I can make this a little bit better here. What do you think? How'd I do? That's not at all what a bird looks like, but I'm trying to do that thing with they do with this brush, and I can't do it. I'm trying. We're gonna do something in the painting. You'll see. Okay, so let me first say this. I have never used these brushes before, but I enjoyed using them, and they did get stained a little bit at the tips based on the colors I was using. I used the Kuretake paints. That's right, I said Kuretake. Why don't you go ahead and correct me on that one? Anyway, the Nouveau paints, donkeys. Anyway, the point is, I had a lot of fun with this. I really enjoyed using them. All the brushes worked just like I wanted them to. Like I said in the beginning, they worked. I guess I used them very wet in the beginning. I mean, there was a lot of water in there. I dumped the whole thing in the water pot, and then I dip it in right into the pan, and it got soaked, and then I put it on the page, and you saw how light it came at first, and then I put in some extra color in. But the thing that I want you to see is the texture that is in that painting. The texture that the paint formed on there using those brushes, it was beautiful, it was wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed using them. They worked exactly like I wanted them to. Those calligraphy brushes, I know that I didn't use them the way that you normally are supposed to use them, but I just used them the way I wanted to use them. You know, it's a nice thing about when you buy a watercolor brush, you get to use it however you want to use it. Isn't that wonderful? I think it is. So I know that wasn't the traditional way to use them, but I used them the way that I wanted to, and I got great results from them as far as what I was trying to do. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I know everybody always goes for the, oh, let's make like a little animal, a little cute animal that this is something you recognize. Well, I wanted to make an animal too. It's not maybe little or cute, but it's an animal. And just because I made it doesn't mean it doesn't exist, because I made it, so it exists. But this painting took absolutely no time at all because everything worked exactly as I expected it to work. It didn't, nothing threw me for a loop. Nothing was like, oh, I wanted to do this, but the brush wouldn't let me. No, everything worked exactly as I wanted it to. I would go back in, and you see me, because I used the Kuretake paints, and I know I didn't use the Nouveau paints. I used the Nuance set, but I just had to say the word just to, anyway. I know I'm saying it wrong. It's really Nouveau. I know. Don't worry about it. But anyway, the point is, I wanted to use that Nuance set, and because I love those colors that are in it, and I used them, and I put them in here, and I thought they were wonderful. I love putting the colors into the colors and getting that effect of the spread of the color. And then when it dries, it's all intermingled and kind of mottled together. I absolutely love that about those paints. The Kuretake paints are something very unique. And I know some people say, oh no, they're not watercolor and they're not gouache. They're something else. It's a Gansai paint. I understand that's what they are. But they say that they're watercolor. If you say it's Gansai, Kuretake, Tambi, watercolor. It says watercolor right on the ad. Anyway, so, but that's how I used them, as watercolor, and they worked beautifully. I did put them inside of each other a little bit more concentrated on some of them. Used it a little bit more like gouache on the second, like the second color that I added. And it was beautiful. I absolutely enjoyed it. And it was quick. Everything worked very quickly, exactly as I wanted to. I'm happy. And so I would like to know something from my vegan artists that are in the audience. Is it okay to use a wool brush if it's naturally shedding season for the animal, and that's when they usually clean the wool anyway? And if you don't clean the wool, have you ever seen an animal that has wool that it doesn't get cleaned and it gets all matted and nappy and gets like starts ripping at their skin and stuff like that? So if you actually help the animal by cleaning off the extra shedding and you use it in a brush, is that okay? Can you do that? You tell me. I have no idea. I'm not a vegan, so I don't know. But you let me know, because I know that there are some people out there in the audience who always say, I can't use that brush because it was made from sable or is made from whatever, and I don't want to use that. The only synthetic brush here is the detail brush. These are synthetic, they're nylon, but the other ones are wool. These calligraphy brushes are wool. And they even make a point to say for their other brushes, please let everyone know no animals are actually harmed when we collect this fur. I don't know how they do it, but that's what they say. But especially for the wool, they said there's definitely this is natural season for them. So please let me know. I want to hear from you what you think about that. Please tell me. I'm sure I'll forget that I asked that question, and I'll be getting a bunch of answers about it. And why is they talking to me about wool? I don't know, but don't worry, I'll remember. Just give me a minute. I am curious though about using the thinner, like the smaller sizes, and seeing if it's a little bit different. But I'm assuming, I mean, it worked fine, and there was so much. You saw there's so much water. Even if you put too much on the page, you just dab a little bit, and you go to lift some of that water, the whole line just zip right up into this thing. It's great. And like I said, I did leave these brushes a little bit more wet than I normally would. So even the Sable brushes you see when I went through and I kind of pushed that belly down on the paper, it did drop a little bit of water, but it happens when you drop the belly. If you just hit the tip, it doesn't, it goes even stroke, just like everything else. But I kind of flattened it out to kind of get a different kind of angle. And you did see some water drop out on it, but that's normal. That happens with every brush, doesn't matter what it is. But when I went back in and I painted with it normal, it worked like normal. So what am I going to say? Everything worked exactly like I wanted it to, so I'm happy. Just like these people popping up on the screen here. They're very happy. I know, because they tell me all the time. They're very jolly people, and I appreciate that about them. So thumb up the video if you're going to check out any of these sets of brushes, because you know, I know I'm known for using the water brush, but I do use regular watercolor brushes all the time, just not on camera. Everybody yells at me about it. It's just that's not what I usually do on the video. It's a lot quicker and easier and more convenient to use a water brush in a video. However, you do see me from time to time grab some watercolor brushes, and I have golden maple brushes. I have some other brushes. I grab whatever I like to use at the time, and I use it. And that's just, there's no reason why I would not grab for these brushes. Everything worked fine. So it's just an encouraging point. If you decide to look at them, don't be fearful and say, oh, I don't know if I should, if it's really going to work right. It's going to work right. It's just whether or not you enjoy using it. That's the main point. Do you enjoy using that kind of brush? If you don't enjoy using flat brushes, then you shouldn't get a flat brush. But if you enjoy using a flat brush, you can try it. And if you say, well, I don't like the longer handle, you can snip it, or you can learn to use the longer handle and use the longer handle just to make a looser painting. That's all. Okay, let's get into some bloopers, because I'm sure there's some of those. So let's see, these are mini detail brushes. They're detail brush. They're mini detail brushes. Let's try that again. So we have here, there's a 6-pack, and I took one out already, of the brown brushes. The brown brushes. The round brushes, they could be brown. They're a little bit more black than brown. Maybe a dark brown. I don't know. They could be. Maybe they should rename them as brown brushes, and then no one will question anything. So when you flatten these out sometimes, if I flatten this out a little bit, it's almost like a Philly brush. A filbert. It's almost like a Philly brush. Okay. You know, they put the little hooks on the end here, and you can put them together, and then you have like a set of nunchuck brushes. And that way, that's for the artist that likes to just take it and swing at the canvas, and then you have the line right across it. That's what it is. I can't put that in the video. Yeah, these haven't, not as much. It definitely has an odor to it after I've used it and it's still wet. Yeah, there's an odor to it. It's not like a bad odor. It's not terrible. It just has a small odor to them. I don't think the Sables do. No, the Sables don't smell at all in the synthetic. Yeah, the synthetic one doesn't smell at all. Sniffing brushes with Pete, now on your local access television. If you would like to join our community, go to illustrationsbypete.com. You can come in, you can put your own artwork on the site and promote it. You can find some inspiration in the free reference photos. You can just use them however you want in your artwork. You do not need to credit me. Or you can come into the forums and talk to some people and maybe give some advice and maybe find a little bit of information that helps you. So come check us out. All right, that's about it for me. I'm going to go. I'll see you in the next one.